So, you know how Stop Killing Games was happening previously, and there were two major petitions that were leading the way to potential change? Well, one was for the UK and was for the European Union. So, obviously, the UK had gotten more than the 100,000 signatures required. And of course, currently, from what I remember seeing with the European Citizens Initiative or whatever it's called, more than 600,000 of them 1.3 million signatures have been approved, so they're not that far off from approving the remaining, and hopefully once they do, that the European Citizens Initiative will actually force some kind of change in the European side of things. But as far as the UK is concerned, you only need 100,000 signatures for the UK government to have a look at it. So UK Parliament debated the Stop Killing Games campaign with basically close to like 200,000 signatures, almost there but not quite. Unfortunately, it seems like the government isn't gonna do anything. So politicians debate recent examples of games being destroyed. Some of the recent examples they used were The Crew, which I think is the obvious one. Concord, which basically was sold to people, died and then was refunded, so at least that had a better ending to it and only lasted 2 weeks. God forbid anybody ever wanted to play that game. And Multiverses, which is more of a free-to-play game, so I feel like we're hitting three different avenues of examples where The Crew, you paid for the game at full price, you had it for 10 years, and then you couldn't play it anymore. Concord was released to less than full price, $40 I guess, and it lasted for 2 weeks and everyone got a refund. Completely different situation to what The Crew went through, but kind of similar flavor because they both got shut down. Then with Multiverses, that was a free-to-play game, which is already different from Concord and The Crew because you didn't have to pay for it to jump in. But the thing is that the game was eventually, shut down, and there was no such refund. Well, there was a somewhat of a refund for some like seasonal stuff, but vast majority of payments that were made for microtransactions in that game probably weren't refunded. So I thought those were interesting differentiations of examples. But in Europe, obviously Stop Killing Games amassed more than 1 million signatures, sparking a response from its Games Industry Lobbying Association, so that was Video Games Europe, which argued that it would legally risk and be prohibitively expensive for developers to develop these games in a way that could be supported when the official developer support ends. But the problem is, what they're specifically talking about is in relation to online-only live service games, which I feel like a lot of people could definitely agree are lower in quality than that of actual single player, handcrafted experiences that we kind of expect to see with games like we used to back in the day. Now, in the UK, nearly 200,000 people signed the petition for the issue to be debated in Parliament, and sure enough, they did. Basically, multiple MPs presented their arguments for why the government should rethink how consumer laws protect those who purchase video games. And then we had, so here are some kind of examples of what some of the MPs said. So Pam Cox, for example, said, the Stop Killing Games movement highlights the growing frustration among players who see their purchases vanish. It is clear that digital ownership should be respected and publishers should look to provide routes for players to retain or repair games even if the official service support for product ends, which obviously she gets what's going on. Henry Tunfell, another MP for Mid and South Pembrokeshire, basically said, I agree about the extent to which games have a cultural identity and that to take them down erases a cultural and artistic heritage that is vital to society and to the wider industry as well. And that I would actually agree to some extent because games that are made are usually products of their time. There's a lot of games that are basically unplayable to current day standards, but that's also not to say that they're necessarily bad. They just helped shape decision making processes in some way to get us to where we are now, and very much is a cultural thing. He continues to say, as campaigners have rightly argued, if every copy of a book, film, or song were destroyed, we would see it as a cultural tragedy. We should view the loss of video games in the same light. And it's unfortunate that it really isn't seen in the same light, which is crazy to think about that. Mark Seward's, another MP for Leeds, Southwest, and Morley, said, I am not demanding that publishers keep their games running forever, which is exactly also what the Stop Killing Games movement is saying. Campaigners are not asking for indefinite technical support. We are not asking companies to keep pouring resources into a game that they have finished with. What we are asking is fairly simple, that publishers should not be able to deliberately disable every copy of a game that consumers have already purchased, leaving them with nothing. Which strikes me at my very core, because I got my little brother a copy of The Crew back when he first got his PS4 in, I want to say, 2015. So he's had the game for a while, but I don't think he's ever finished it, because now it's going to remain unfinished for the poor bugger, because, well, how the hell is he going to play with the server shut down? You know what I mean? So same idea applies. Like, we now have a disc that is basically non-functional, among other things. Oh boy. Seals argued that the end of support seen in many modern video games wasn't the same as in electronics company ending support for an old printer, because it still prints documents. What we are seeing with games is different, he said. Alright, let's see where this goes. It is as if someone brought that printer and then one day the manufacturer sent out a signal that deliberately stopped it from working at all, claiming it had reached the end of support. This is not support ending, it is obsolescence, which has entirely a different meaning, and that's absolutely true. And of course, we've got, Ubisoft as an example, obviously, with The Crew being taken offline last year and very much sparking the Stop Killing Games movement as if it were. Now, they also give examples to stuff like EA's Anthem, Platinum Games' Babylon's Fall, so I'm currently trying to Platinum Anthem. I have Platinum Babylon's Fall before the game shut down. Lawbreakers, I don't think I've ever played, but then again, it never came to consoles. I think it only really stayed on PC, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong about that. Game didn't actually survive that long. But then, responding to the arguments, the government's representative, Minister for Sports, Tourism, Civil Society and Youth, Stephanie Peacock MP, acknowledged consumer sentiment behind the Stop Killing Games, but suggested there were no plans to amend the UK law at around this issue. So this is crazy. Also, image of Anthem here. The government recognizes the strength behind the campaign that led to the debate. She said the petition attracted 190,000 signatures. Similar campaigns, including a European Citizens Initiative, reached over 1 million signatures. There has been significant interest across the world. So with that significant interest, is she going to do something? At the same time, the government also recognizes the concern from the video games industry about some campaign asks. Online video games are often dynamic, interactive services, not static products, and maintaining online services would require substantial investment in over years or even decades. Which is not what people are wanting. That is what the video games industry wants, not what the people who play the games want. Which is already it feels like the UK government is, or at least this lady in particular, is in the pocket of getting money from the video games industry if she said no to this in some ways. Let's put it that way. I'm not saying that this is absolutely the case, it really feels like it is, because she echoes some of the talking points that the video games industry is putting forward. She's claimed that modern video games were complex to develop and maintain. Implementing plans for end of support could be extremely challenging, which is again another thing that video game industry people are telling government officials, that in order to try and defend themselves from Stop Killing Games, basically creating harmful unintended consequences for players, which is again giving people the access for stuff like making private servers, as an example. Is it just me, or is it not the stuff that she's saying is basically the stuff that you would expect to see from video game publishers like EA would say, or something that 2K would say? And obviously those are not the guys you want to be in the side of. And so she was talking about commercial and legal risks. But the thing is that if the publisher no longer like relinquishes the service over to the people, do they still, have that sort of legal liability? Who the hell knows? But they shouldn't if they're like making this stuff open source or whatever. Safety concerns due to removal of official company moderation. Again, the people should moderate themselves instead of, or making like communities, because obviously there are stuff like Discord communities, there are stuff like Reddit communities. I feel like people are able to moderate themselves to some extent. And of course, now this is something interesting that this lady brings up. So she claims that video games being licensed to customers rather than sold is not a new phenomenon, and that in the 1980s, tearing the wrap on a box of a games cartridge was the way that gamers agreed to licensing terms, which I don't agree with. Yes. Licensing video games is not, as some have suggested, a new and unfair business practice, she claims. And of course, that's like, the full statement basically right then and there. And it's way too much to read, but basically, it doesn't seem like the UK government is going to do anything about this, despite the fact that they forced a debate to happen by way of signing 200,000 signatures to a petition to plead to the government, hey, come on, you guys gotta look at this, or like talk about it, or do something at the very least, if nothing else. And it seems like it's just all fallen on deaf ears at this point. And all of the talking points seem to echo exactly that of what you'd expect to hear from video game companies or Video Games Europe, in the sense of like those guys who are trying to like fight against stop killing games as well. Like, it really does feel like it falls in that category, in that swamp. But maybe I'm looking at things in an incredibly negative viewpoint. I mean, you guys can let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. I'd be very, very interested to hear what you guys have to say about this, because this is a very fascinating subject that I very much care a lot about. Because I really do want there to be law changes in Europe, in the UK, because once those law changes happen there, the world will have to follow eventually. When I say the world, I'm talking about people making video games, because you can't just make two versions of a game, one that's specific to Europe and one that's specific to everywhere else. So with all that being said though, let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to our channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by the end of the year, and with all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.